Welcome to the Amplifying Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Tara Lehman, a partner, coach, and consultant at Twin Life Coaching and Business Services, of which Amplifying Leadership is a division. This podcast is a place dedicated to amplifying your leadership, your awesome guest stories, tips, information, and more. To learn more about our leadership division, please visit us at amplifyingleadership.ca. Today, I am welcoming Kate Hendrickson, a consultant, author, and leader. Welcome to Amplifying Leadership.
Thanks so much.
So I'm really excited about our topic today. It is one that does talk to me, and it's something I've done for many, many years, all about goal setting. But before we get there, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background so our audience knows you?
Sure, absolutely. So, Kate Hendrickson, I am about, I'll say, I'll open up and give you my age. I'm about
Sure.
25 years into my professional career. And I started after college in actually the TV and film industry.
Oh.
I started in casting. So I
Mhm.
worked for some films, like extras casting and getting
Right.
all the people who are walking down the sidewalk or in the
Oh, fun.
stadiums, right? And
Yeah.
so I was a casting assistant,
Mhm.
eventually moving into a role as a casting coordinator, and then just loving that whole industry and atmosphere and
Mhm.
moving into production itself and production coordination. So I did that for a few years. And during that time, I did advance into a position where I was a production coordinator that traveled to various cities, and I would go into the city and hire 10 production assistants that would come in and work with us for a 2 week period. And then we would
Okay.
move on to the next city and I would redo it all
Mhm.
over again and hire 10 more production assistants. And at that point, I was very, new to my professional
Mhm.
career. My experience was not in leadership, and I was thrown into being, hiring and HR
Right.
practices and leading a team of new people every few weeks, having new people that,
Wow.
trying to
Yeah.
lead. So it really just threw me into a lot of learning at that
I
point.
bet.
Um, so I did that for many years, and then I decided I wanted to personally shift direction, and I went into hospitality and did operations management, where I took my project management production coordination skills and moved it into an industry where it had a little bit more stability. I wasn't jumping from
Mhm.
job to job, movie to movie, and TV show to TV
Fair.
show.
Yeah.
And I moved into that hospitality field. It was right around the time I met my husband and we were going to get married and all of those things that we were looking to do.
Mhm.
And again, similar situation. I was put into a leadership position with not no leadership training other than my experiences, but no
Mhm.
true training, right?
Mhm.
I worked for one of the companies that I worked for. They had three restaurants. They did catering, they did event planning, they did large weddings, we did all kinds of things, right? And we had no leadership structure. We had no
Wow.
like evaluation structure, right? Because it was also the people who, own the business, they grew up
Mhm.
in the restaurant industry. They didn't go to
Right.
leadership training and leadership skills. And so I came in to
Mhm.
run operations and went, whoa, I've got people everywhere. And then I would get those, right? I would have those requests from employees to go, well, can I have a raise? And I'm like, I don't know if you could have a raise, right? Like, what's the criteria? What does that look like? How
Right.
do we do that? So I created my own evaluation system and structure,
Awesome.
but again, didn't know what I was doing. No real, and it was some of it, a lot of it was very subjective because I didn't know any different at the time. I would, say, yeah, we're gonna give you a quarter raise, and a quarter an hour because it seemed like the right thing to do, right? You've been with us a
Right.
year, so sure, yeah, I'll give you an
Yeah.
extra quarter, an hour. So I worked with that company for about 5 or 6 years. Again, continuing to learn a lot along the way,
Mhm.
learn a lot about my own leadership style, and then decided I wanted to go into some bigger and better things, and went into consulting
Mm.
and worked for a very large consulting firm. I did that for over 10 years, but the first few years I was in the project management side
Mhm.
and had it was the first time I had really had a leader who they knew what they were doing, right? Like
Okay.
it
Yeah.
was really cool to be a part of. And I went, wow. if I lead people again, that's the kind of leader I want to be, right?
Oh,
It
that's
was
awesome.
structured processes. Every time we met and I was in the room, I was the most important thing to that leader in that moment, right? No, I knew she had 100 other things going on and she had other direct reports and she had other things that other priorities. But in that 10 minutes that she focused on me, that 10 minutes was mine and she
Wow,
really,
that's awesome.
was able to focus on me. We had structured goals and it was just like, I was like, this is wonderful. Like, I wish I would have known all these things years ago.
Right?
Um, and so over my tenure with the consulting firm, I moved out of the project management team and into the consulting team and started working with organizations on strategy, goal management, action plans.
Mm,
And so my last 6 or
excellent.
7 years with that company, I worked with a lot of large hospitals, hospital
Hmm.
organizations. I worked with some hospitality. I worked with some casinos, actually. I worked
Oh,
with
wow.
Yes, I work with some churches. So really, but a lot of large organizations with a lot of
Mhm,
people that needed one, some focus and two, some structure around
mhm.
their, long-term strategy and goals. So I love I mean, I just fell in love with this whole process. That's so much so that I do it at home with my family. I mean, my husband and I, like
Love that.
we have our personal strategic plan. Like, what do we want? And we've got it divided into categories. And what do we want to achieve from a, community perspective of how we're contributing to our community? What do we want to achieve
Hmm.
financially within our own household? What do we want to achieve as engagement with each other? So are
Hmm.
we being consistent with our date nights and how we're connecting with our kids and all of those things, right? So I took all of that structure and like I use it personally as well. And now I've left the larger consulting firm and I'm working with, I'm doing a few things, but there's one
Hmm.
company that I'm working with called Freedom Blueprint Collab, and we do leadership skills, financial skills for industries in the home services arena. So
Okay.
large plumbing companies, your garage door companies, your HVAC companies, right? Again, that's another industry where a lot of these people started out as technicians and either
Yeah.
went, I can own my own company, I can do this myself, or they got just advanced along the way and put into a leadership role and went, all right, I got to figure this out,
Hmm.
and they don't really quite know what they're doing, which is totally understandable. So we come in and really help with a lot of those leadership skills, and I, focus a lot on strategy and goals. And then I also do it because I'm so passionate about it. I also freelance a little bit. So if it's
Hmm.
not in the home services
Right.
sector or industry, I will kind of do a little bit on the side because it's so important for me for small businesses to
Yes.
understand this process. And so that's where I've landed so far in the last 25 years in a
And
nutshell.
it's interesting you talk about, even yourself and those entrepreneurs that are out there and they really they have such good heart. They want to do the best they can, but who's
Yes.
taught leadership skills? This is why I do some leadership training and coaching and consulting because it's not usually trained. I was lucky enough that we did leadership trained the trainer in my corporate life, and I was one of those people. So we had, programs set up, but not a lot of companies do. And so when it comes to setting those strategies and those strategic things, some people do miss the goals, but larger companies do understand the need for goals, but then also the action plans. And I kind of want to talk about that because we all have goals. Like, oh, I want to retire at 55, right? Those types
Right?
of
Yes.
things, but we don't actually execute the goals. So, how is it that, when we use execution to actually create our goals, but then also create the action plans? Like, tell us a little bit about that strategy. What does that look like from creating the goal to creating the action plan for you? Like, for you, for what do you share?
Sure, absolutely. So I have had many opportunities to talk to various groups of people in all various skill sets when it comes to goal setting, right? And so,
Hmm.
a lot of times I'll start with this story because kind of level sets all of us. And I don't know if you follow or have read Stephen Covey. but
Oh, yes.
he wrote The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, and
Hmm.
he tells a story about a professor. And I was like, "There's I'm gonna say there's various versions of this. So if you look it up later, there's a lot of versions, but
Yes.
I'm gonna give you mine." He tells a story about a professor who stands up in front of a class with an empty jar, and he fills it with large rocks, and he asks his class, "Is the jar full?" And the class is like, "Well, yeah, it's full of big rocks." And then he pours some gravel in there, fills it to the top, and he says, "Now is it full?" And they were like, "Well, yeah, now it's really full." And then he puts some sand in there and it fills in all the little cracks, right? And he says, "Is the jar full?" They're obviously getting skeptical at this point. And then finally, he pours water into the very top, and you cannot fit anything else inside this jar. And he asked the class, "Why do you think I'm doing this exercise?" And a student says, "Because no matter what's on our plate, we can always do more." And he said, "No, because if I didn't put the big rocks in first, I never would have gotten everything else inside." And that's
Hmm.
how I look at strategy and goal setting, right? And so let's look at what are the big rocks we need to achieve and that we want
Hmm.
to achieve from a long-term perspective.
Hmm.
And then we can do all the other things that we want to do to make us successful. So we've got our strategy and long-term goals. For example, a company might have a long-term strategy to increase their clients or customers by 25% in the next 5 years. Their 1 year goal might be to increase their client and customer base by 5%
Hmm.
in the next year. Right? In 2026, we're going to increase by 5%.
Hmm.
The action plan are then those key things that we're going to do to achieve that. And so number one is documentation, right? I might have it all in my head. I want to do this and I want to do that and I want to, right? I'm all over the place. I have so
Yep.
many ideas. It sounds so fun because we're going to do all the things and we're just going to grow and we're going to but really, truly pen to paper, let's document what are we going to do? What's our timeline around getting things
Hmm.
done, right? Do we have due dates that we need to hit to make sure we're continuing to move in the right direction? And it could be around marketing. It could be adding a new service line. It could be adding a new product. It could be, right? All of these cool ideas,
Hmm.
but really putting some structure around what that looks like with dedicated timelines, and then figuring out a structured accountability system around that as well, right? And
Hmm.
so who's holding you accountable to these deadlines, right? Is it you? Is
Yes.
it your team? Is it another leader or manager, right? Who is that your accountability partner and
Hmm.
continuing to make sure you're hitting these goals and in these timelines within your action plan. So I highly recommend, right, that long-term big goal, that long-term strategy goal, the 1 year goal, and then a 90-day goal. So what
Hmm.
am I going to achieve in a 90-day period? And then what are my key 2 or 3 things that I'm doing to achieve that, right? Not every single little thing that you came up with and your ideas that you put it, written
Yeah.
all over the place or have in your head, but 2 or 3 key things in the next 90 days that is going to help us get hit to the next point.
Hmm.
Documentation, due dates, right? Timelines,
Hmm.
and then a consistent monthly review of where you're at. So, with that accountability partner, team, your entire team, right? Whatever that looks like for you, but then that consistent focus once a month to say, "Hey, this is what we've achieved. We haven't quite achieved what we expected. What do we need to
Hmm.
change and adjust?" Or, "Hey, we're doing like this is working. Like we've implemented this and this. We're continuing to do this and this, and we're seeing the progress that we're hoping for." So, that truly I feel like is getting into that habit on a consistent basis really can help you move the dial much quicker.
I love your process too, because I do the same type of thing with a lot of my business clients, so business owners. And I do the vision casting of where do you want to be in 5 years? And
Mhm.
then let's bring it down to 1 year. And I do the same thing, the 90 days or, the 6 months or whatever it is that they want to work with.
Right.
Because we all have a billion ideas. I love the idea of just document the ideas. I call it brainstorming, like just get it out there and then pick the ones you want to focus on. Because otherwise, you can have 20 things you're working on, and what gets done? Nothing, right?
Nothing.
Like nothing
Nothing.
gets accomplished. So
Yeah.
I love that you do bring that down to the 2 to 3 things that you really can focus on. So you have a mission every week of what is it I'm going to get done and towards the 90 day, which helps you get towards the 6 months if you're doing it or the year in your case. I
Right.
have to come back to what I love that you said that I find is the missing piece. It's the accountability and follow through. That is the missing piece. So that monthly check-in is
Yes, right.
phenomenal,
Yeah.
right? What are the obstacles that are stopping leaders from, following through on things, even if maybe they are doing check-ins? What is stopping them? What is stopping them from achieving the goal or just those mini steps that you talk about to get there? What are those barriers you see?
Right, right, absolutely. And I think there's also something to be said about that being non-negotiable time, right? And
Yes,
so
I
I think
agree.
it's really easy to say, oh, there's an internal meeting, that we're going to talk about goals, or I have a one-to-one conversation with an employee to talk about goals, or
Mhm.
however you structure that piece of it. But something else came up, or I have a deadline, or I have another priority, and I can just move that around,
The
right? Like
excuses, right?
it's so easy to just say, we could do
Yes.
that tomorrow, or we could do that later.
Yes.
I think prioritizing the fact that this is non-negotiable time, that however you
Love
you
that.
structure it, if it whether the first Tuesday of the month, we're looking at our results from last month from 9 to 10 o'clock in the morning, right? Whatever it looks like for you, that doesn't move, right? That time doesn't move, and we are
Yep.
prepared, and we come with the data, right? We come with the results, because that's another piece of it is, are we tracking the results consistently? Do we even know where we're at? And so
Yes.
really ensuring that you've got accurate data. It's updated consistently, and then you come prepared to for that conversation to really look at where you stand. Because if your data's kind of all over the place and you haven't really updated something in a couple of weeks, and then you come to this meeting and you're going, well, I think we're here, and I think
Mhm.
we're right, I think we've achieved
Yeah.
this. It loses its value. That meeting and those conversations lose their
Yeah.
value. So I think that's another key element too, is really being prepared and making that time non-negotiable.
And I remember having key performance indicators as part of the strategy when we met monthly was to, if our goal was to increase sales by example, by whatever percent, here's where we are this month. And then we would have some actions that went along with why weren't we meeting where we thought we were or whatever. Do you find that those types of goal setting methodologies actually do help people build the habit of being able to be consistent and actually start to meet some goals when they build in these types of habits?
Yes, I absolutely do. And I think it can be uncomfortable at first. I will
Hmm.
say, if you are not accustomed to this structure and style, right? If you're not
Hmm.
accustomed to having that conversation either with your direct report or your leader, on a monthly consistent basis, to take a look at those KPIs and see where you stand,
Hmm.
it can feel a little bit like, oh my gosh, is it micromanaging? Are they looking over my shoulder? Like, what is happening? Am I doing something wrong? Right? It's easy for your head to go there. But once you start to realize this is truly for the benefit of your own development, the development of the company, right? The
Hmm.
growth of the company. And so that way, if you win, we all win. Um,
Hmm.
that that it's not necessarily your boss or leader micromanaging and looking over your shoulder. It actually keeps them from having to micromanage on a day-to-day
Hmm.
basis, right?
Yeah.
Like, so if you
Yes.
have that
Yeah.
consistent conversation every month to say, hey, let's look at our KPIs. Let's see
Hmm.
where we stand. Are you facing any barriers? Are you having any barriers to achieving X, Y, and Z? And let's talk through those. Then you get to leave that conversation empowered to go do your job, because you know exactly
Hmm.
what is expected of you, and you can go do that. I think once individuals get accustomed to this structure, and really kind of, it might take a few months,
Hmm.
they start to really enjoy and appreciate it, right? I know I
Hmm.
did. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time, but in the beginning, it was like I wasn't prepared. I wasn't always prepared, or I didn't know what to expect. And then I became extremely prepared, and I couldn't wait for my meeting. And I had all these things that I had like planned to talk about, right? And I was
Yeah.
ready. And I think that when it becomes a part of your culture and your organization,
Hmm.
man, it can be powerful, really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it provides a lot of clarity. And this
Mhm.
can work for those huge corporations that you and I have probably worked with before
Right.
to entrepreneurs. If you're even a solopreneur, this method works. Where do you want to be in a year? Bring it down to the 90 days. What are those three goals? And if you need an accountability partner, that's why leadership coaches exist, right? We can be those
Exactly. Oh,
partners for
Tara.
you, right? Yeah. Um, and
Exactly.
and so knowing what KPIs though to follow is something that is interesting because sales is usually a KPI everybody talks about.
Mhm.
When it comes to the KPIs, key performance indicators, how many should we track, do you think, on average? I know every goal is different, but so it's not overwhelming. I remember having to do like, I don't know, 20 a month, and it's
Mhm.
overwhelming,
That is
right?
overwhelming. That's a lot.
So I would break it down for the teams, would have maybe 2 to 3. What would you suggest? Let's call it a team, a leader with their team, right? What would you suggest is I wouldn't say ultimate number because it depends on what they do, but try not to go over this because it's too overwhelming. Do you have any thoughts on that?
My recommendation and best practice is typically 4 to 6, and
Okay.
but
Yeah.
breaking it into specific categories. So you may have, so we said we talk a lot of people talk about sales. So sales
Yeah.
or growth, like those kind of goals. You may have one or two of those. Then you might have a people related goal, like something about your team. So it could be your goal could be something around turnover, right? Like
Right.
maybe you had a rough year last year and that's okay. It happens. And you lost more employees on your team than you had hoped, from voluntary
Hmm.
turnover. So you're going to put a goal in your, for the upcoming year to say, I want 10% or less on voluntary
Right.
turnover, whatever that may be, whatever that number looks
Hmm.
like for you, or the size of your team may have a lot to do with that as well.
For sure.
But I think having a goal that's connected to various aspects of your role, so sales and growth, maybe something related to your people or your team, potentially something around the service that you're offering to your clients or the products that you're offering to your clients. So quality, right? The quality of the
Hmm.
service that you're providing, have some kind of goal that's measuring what that looks like. So you're still maintaining that high quality of service. So typically, my thoughts are 4 to 6, but I agree with you. I feel like it varies based on the role, the level of leadership you're in.
Hmm.
If you don't really have any direct reports of people that work under you, that 3 or 4 range around focusing on a few specific things that are, kind of within your control, is where I feel
Yeah.
is a comfortable place.
It feels less overwhelming too. And we can
Yes.
actually now create our action plans because we have something that's very specific, right?
Right,
And
right.
that helps us achieve those goals. When we talk about like the successful strategies around goal setting, what are the key things? So obviously we want to make sure we have accountability. We want to make sure we're setting those monthly meetings. What is the goal though? Like how do we determine the goal to be successful? So I find that some clients pick goals that make no sense at all, while others pick some that are very good. How is it that, talk about is let's talk about a little bit of what does a successful goal for an organization look like? Are there key pieces to it?
Yes,
So, okay,
absolutely. I think you need to be able to have a quantitative, data-driven, like something that you can visit, like a number you can track, right?
like data.
Um,
Okay, yeah,
yeah, that's the data behind it because if it's just I want my company to grow, right? That can mean a lot of different things, and
yes.
we're not really tracking, right? If we're moving in the right direction, there's no data around it. So one, you have to have data. A few ways to do that is one, first figure out what data do you currently have? Are there
Right.
reports that you currently pull that has some of this information already? Or is this something we need to figure out how to start collecting and what that looks like? So I think that is kind of once we identify what we want to do, then we look at do we have the data to track it? And if
Right.
not, how do we get that?
Hmm.
And then as far as setting what is the actual realistic, achievable goal? Um,
Hmm.
there's a few ways. I a lot of times will say let's take a look at historical data. So if
Hmm.
you do have if we are able to pull some reports and we are able to look at maybe what you've achieved in the last year or 2 years or 3 years or whatever that may be, that's a really good starting point. So that way we can understand what would truly be an achievable goal to hit. Um, Also, industry standards. There's a
Hmm.
lot of resources out there in all different
For sure.
industries around what
Hmm.
other organizations what might be doing and might be achieving with the caveat that everybody's a little different. But it gives you just kind of a baseline of how quickly others that are in the same area are
Hmm.
moving. So those are two starting points for me from a let's figure out what we can achieve. I think there's something to be said about giving yourself some flexibility in year one to understand that
I
we may need
agree.
to course correct. Like we may need to build in a 6 month review to say, hey, by the end of the
Hmm.
year, we thought we wanted to hit this. At the 6 month point, we're going to review and say, did we truly set a realistic and
Right. Yeah.
finish line? It doesn't mean change it. It could mean change it, right? It could mean
Yep.
change it. It could mean change action items, but I think there is some definite benefit to having that 6 month check-in and looking at that finish line to see, did I completely mess it up, right? Did I completely,
Yeah.
I said we're going to
Yeah.
grow by 20% in this first year and we've grown by like 3%. Like, did I,
Yeah.
was I have, but my goals a little too lofty, right? And so,
Yeah.
I think all of those things can
Yeah.
really help you figure it out. And after year one, it's in year two, right? You start to see a trend and you truly have an idea of what you can achieve. And then your actions
Hmm.
get firmer and your team gets stronger and you're moving a little bit more quicker. But really, like looking year over year and month over month, I think is important in setting some realistic goals.
Hmm.
I think that coach aspect as well. So when you have a leadership coach, they can help guide you through that as well. And I do think people are a little cautious sometimes around that hiring the coach thing, right? Um, and so my personal opinion is two things. One, think about like sports teams, right? Like even those professional athletes have coaches that are still
Hmm.
guiding them and helping them get to the next level or keeping them on track or giving them guidance, right? And
Hmm.
so I think looking at it that way can kind of make you look at the coaching aspect a little bit differently. I recently wrote a book. It came out a couple
Hmm.
months ago. It is not related to any of this. It is a fun little fiction Christmas book
Oh,
that
fun.
is adorable and sweet, and you would find it on a Hallmark movie. It was just a bucket list thing for me
Hmm.
that I've fallen in love with, like a little side hobby. But
Hmm.
I've got a book coach when I started the true process of really getting into the writing and the
Hmm.
editing and all of the pieces because it was something that I didn't know what I was doing, right? And so
Right.
I got a book coach and we met every month and we talked about where I was in the process and what I needed to do next and if I had achieved what we had talked about. So I just, I want people to feel comfortable and confident knowing that getting a coach is not saying like, hey, I'm giving up. It's, hey, um, this is important to me and I want
Hmm.
to grow and get better and get stronger. And so I think
Hmm.
getting a coach to help you with some of the goal setting is very important.
Yeah. And it's that accountability that we talked about earlier.
Yes. Yeah.
And I have to say, I love that you hit on that. Check it out in 6 months, especially if it's a new one for you.
Right.
Because, if we think about even sales and how the economy has changed over the past couple of years and the ups and downs, you don't know what's going to happen in your industry in the next, 6 months. So really looking at it realistically, are we on target? Maybe that 20% needs to be 50. Maybe it needs to be
Right.
five, right? So I
Right.
love that you mentioned that. Let's wrap up our conversation because I think you and I could go on about goals
Think so
all
too.
day because it's a
Think so
passion for
too.
both of us. But let's leave our audience with that key takeaway that you want to share with them today. What would that be?
If this feels overwhelming, I mean, I know we just threw a lot of information at you in the last 25, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
If this feels overwhelming, start with one, right? Think about one thing you would like to achieve long term. Write down one goal on paper with a quantitative data point attached to it to say, I want to achieve X by X date, right? Start with one. And then write out, what are the two or three key things you are going to do. Start with yourself and start with one goal to just get you started and get you comfortable with the process. And then you can start to really grow it into something super cool.
And it builds the habit too, doesn't it, of
Absolutely.
learning the goals. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for all the information. I'm wondering if our listeners did want to learn more about you or reach out, talk more about goals, is there a way they can find you online?
Absolutely. So I will share. My website is very focused on my little Christmas book, but
Okay.
I do have one page on there that it says Beyond the Books. And it's like
Okay.
to contact me about strategy work. It's about
Okay.
just me and more of my strategy and leadership
Excellent.
expertise. So don't worry if you hop on the website. It's kate-hendrickson.com. And you see a Christmas book. There is you can find me. You can absolutely find me. And then you can also find me on Instagram as KW Hendrickson. And my email address is kate@khendricksonllc.com. So I would love to hear from you guys.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Good luck with your book.
Thanks.
And of course, thank you for sharing all of the information and advice today. It's wonderful advice for everybody, and I hope that helps them with their goals. Thanks, Kate.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sarah.
Of course, we thank you, our audience today. We do hope you gained some valuable insights or tips around goal setting from today's conversation with Kate. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to leave us a great rating. This helps us and our guests like Kate reach even more leaders with helpful advice, tips, and stories. We love helping other leaders grow and thrive. Leadership is better when we do it together. So we would love for you to consider our brand new Amplifying Leadership Circle community. More information on the community and all of our leadership services can be found at amplifyingleadership.ca. Until next time, remember, leadership matters.